Bessie Stringfield's name is not one you will find in most history textbooks, but it deserves to be carved in bold letters alongside the greatest pioneers of American courage. She was a tiny black woman born in the Jim Crow South who, against every law, every threat, and every closed door, got on a motorcycle and rode across a country that did not want her to exist. Her story is not just about speed or steel, it is about a woman who looked segregation in the face, twisted the throttle, and left its dust behind. She was born Bessie Beatrice White around 1911, though the exact date remains a mystery because she was orphaned so young that she never truly knew her own birthday. What is known is that she was born in Kingston, Jamaica, but grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, raised by a wealthy Irish Catholic woman who loved her like a daughter. As a teenager, Bessie fell in love with something that no proper young lady of the 1920s was supposed to touch, a motorcycle. She begged her foster mother for one, and eventually the woman relented, buying Bessie a brand new 1928 Indian Scout motorcycle. Bessie threw her league over that machine, kicked the starter, and her life changed forever. She taught herself to ride on the streets of Boston, and within weeks, she was doing tricks that made grown men stop and stare, but this was not just a hobby. Bessie Stringfield had a restless soul and a need to see what lay beyond the horizon. In the early 1930s, at a time when most women were expected to marry, stay home, and raise children, Bessie packed a small bag and began to ride across the United States. She would eventually make 8 cross-country solo trips, covering tens of thousands of miles long before interstate highways or GPS or roadside assistance. She navigated by following the arrows painted on telephone poles and by reading the position of the sun. She rode through deserts, mountains, swamps, and frozen plains, often sleeping on her motorcycle when there was no other shelter. The greatest danger Bessie faced was not the weather or the road conditions or the mechanical breakdowns. It was the color of her skin. This was the Jim Crow era, the 1930s and 1940s, when segregation was the law of the land in the American South and a brutal, unwritten code everywhere else. A black woman riding alone on a motorcycle was an offense to the social order. Bessie was stopped by police constantly. She was questioned, threatened, and sometimes arrested for no reason other than that she existed. She learned to carry a gun for protection, but more importantly, she learned to carry something sharper, intelligence. She memorized the locations of all the Green Book homes, a guide that listed safe places where black travelers could sleep without being lynched. She would ride all day, sometimes for 16 hours, and then knock on the door of a black family's home, hoping they would let her sleep on their floor. Often, they did. Sometimes, they were too afraid to open the door, and Bessie would sleep. On her bike under a bridge, one of the most famous stories from her travels involves her method for starting her motorcycle in freezing weather. On cold mornings, she would drain oil from the engine into a tin can, run back to the house where she had slept, heat the oil on the stove, and pour it back into the engine before kickstarting the bike. This was not glamorous. This was survival. And Bessie did it for years, crossing the country again and again, simply because she loved the feeling of the wind on her face and the road unspooling beneath her wheels. During World War II, Bessie wanted to serve her country. She tried to enlist as a military motorcycle dispatch rider, a dangerous job that involved carrying messages between bases, often through active combat zones. The military initially rejected her because she was a woman and because she was black. But Bessie was not a woman who accepted no for an answer. She eventually earned a position as a civilian courier for the U.S. Army, carrying documents across the country on her motorcycle. She was one of the only women, and certainly one of the only black women, to perform this role. She rode through the war years without ever being seriously injured, though she crashed at least once, breaking her ankle and taping it herself before continuing her route. After the war, Bessie settled for a time in Miami, Florida, a city that was deeply segregated. She tried to get a motorcycle license, but the white examiner told her that colored women don't ride motorcycles, and refused. to test her. Bessie went to a different office. The same thing happened. She went a third time, and this time she walked into the room, placed her hands on the examiner's desk, and said, "I'm going to ride. You are going to give me the test. And you are going to give me my license." The examiner, stunned by her ferocity, gave her the test. She passed perfectly. Bessie Stringfield had her license taught in Miami. She began performing motorcycle stunts at local fairs and races. She called herself the Negro Motorcycle Queen, a title she claimed with pride and defiance. She could ride standing up backwards and lying flat on the seat. She could jump ramps and weave through obstacles that made other riders dizzy. The crowds, both black and white, came to watch her. But performing was not her true love. Her true love was still the open road. Even in her 50s and 60s, she would pack her bag, throw her league over motorcycle, and disappear for weeks at a time, riding across America just because she could. Bessie married and divorced several times. She outlived all 6 of her husbands, a fact she mentioned with a mix of sadness and dark humor. She had 3 children, but the road always called her back. She never stopped riding. When she was 60 years old, she completed her final cross-country trip, still on 2 wheels, still alone, still fierce that it was not until the late 20th century that the larger world began to notice Bessie Stringfield. In the 1990s, the American Motorcyclists Association, AMA, recognized her as a pioneer and awarded her its highest honor. She was inducted into the AMA Motorcycle Hall of Fame in 2002, the first woman to receive that honor. But by then, Bessie was already gone. She died in 1993, at the age of approximately 82, in Opelika, Florida. She died quietly, without fanfare, in a small apartment surrounded by photographs of her motorcycles and the roads. She had conquered, yet her legacy did not die with her. In recent years, Bessie Stringfield's story has been rediscovered by a new generation. She is the subject of books, documentaries, and children's stories. A mural of her face, helmeted and smiling, now adorns a wall in Miami. Every year, hundreds of female motorcyclists gather for the Bessie Stringfield Memorial Ride, tracing some of the routes she traveled nearly a century ago. Harley-Davidson, the biggest name in American motorcycles, created a custom bike in her honor. And in 2020, the U.S. Army, the same institution that had once rejected her, posthumously recognized her wartime service as a dispatch rider. But the truest monument to Bessie Stringfield is not a plaque or a mural or a museum exhibit. It is the image of a small black woman on a big motorcycle, roaring down a dusty highway in the 1930s, her helmetless head held high, her skin dark against the sun, her eyes fixed on a horizon that most people could not even imagine. She did not wait for permission to ride. She did not wait for the laws to change or for society to accept her. She simply mounted her machine and went. And in that act of pure, unapologetic motion, she did something more powerful than any protest march or legal battle. She proved that freedom does not have to be given. It can be taken 1 mile at a time. When people asked Bessie why she rode, she gave a simple answer. "Because I love it," she said. "Because the road calls to me, and I have to answer." She never saw herself as a hero or a civil rights pioneer. She saw herself as a rider. But that is precisely what made her heroic. She did not ride to make a statement. She rode because she could not imagine not riding. And in that simple, stubborn refusal to be confined, she opened a door for every woman, every person of color, every outcast who has ever been told that. Some road is not for them. Bessie Stringfield taught us that the motorcycle is not just a machine. It is a declaration of independence. It is 2 wheels and an engine, yes, but it is also the wind in your face, the rumble beneath you, and the knowledge that you're going somewhere, not because someone told you to go, but because you chose to go. She rode through Jim Crow. She rode through war. She rode through poverty, loneliness, and the open contempt of a country that wanted her to stay in her place. And in the end, she won. Not because she defeated her enemies in battle, but because she outlasted them. She kept riding long after they gave up trying to stop her. Today, when a young black woman buys her first motorcycle and feels her heart race as she twists the throttle, she is channeling Bessie Stringfield. When a female rider crosses state lines alone, ignoring the whispers and the stares, she is riding in Bessie's tire tracks. When any person who has been told you don't belong here gets on a bike and rides anyway, Bessie Stringfield is right there beside them. Invisible, but present, smiling through the wind. Bessie Stringfield died without wealth. She died without fame. She died without the recognition she deserved, but she did not die without joy. She had lived exactly the life she wanted to live, a life of motion, of danger, of beauty, of freedom. And that, perhaps, is the most radical achievement of all. In a world that tried to shrink her, she expanded. In a world that tried to stop her, she moved. In a world that tried to erase her,